Welcome to the DNSFilter Administrator course. I'm Josh Lamb, Technical Operations Director here at DNSFilter. And in this video, I'm going to take you from zero to hero with our product. You'll learn all about our multiple deployment options, including desktop and mobile roaming clients, and our DNSFilter relay. We'll also go over how to plan for deployment that fits the specific needs of your organization. That's actually our main goal here, to make sure that you're able to understand how DNSFilter's deployment options relate to your company. Customers repeatedly tell us that DNSFilter is very simple and straightforward to set up. And once you are set up, you can expect ongoing administration to be very minimal. At that point, you'll simply be using our reporting to gain insight into user activity, policy controls to allow or deny access as appropriate to your users. So with that said, let's get started on planning your deployment. Although it's very easy to set up DNSFilter, you'll find that there's a wide variety of deployment options. In fact, we have the most widespread platform support of any filtering vendor. So it's helpful to take a step back and consider all of the options that we have so that you can fit it to the needs of your organization. To do that, we've illustrated our different options in 3 slices here. So keep in mind that you can mix and match these options. For example, it's very common for people to use us as a network forwarder as their upstream DNS resolver, as well as deploying roaming clients. So it is possible to mix and match these in various ways. On the first layer on the right, we have network forwarding. This involves setting DNSFilter as your upstream DNS provider on your edge equipment or firewall, whatever handles egress traffic. This will cause a portion or all of your network devices to be filtered by DNSFilter. That's useful to provide a blanket policy that will cover all of your devices, including printers, file servers, or endpoints that are utilizing guest Wi-Fi. On the second layer here in the middle, we have relay. The relay is a local DNS proxy, which allows you to apply filtering policies by IP or subnet on your network. So it's a middleman. It can handle traffic internally and decide whether or not things go to a local DNS resolver, such as your Active Directory domain controller, or whether they go outbound out into the open internet where they are filtered by us. We also have a NAT IP feature, which allows you to map up to 7 VLANs inside your network to specific filtering policies without the additional hardware or software. The final layer you can see here on the left is the roaming client. DNSFilter has roaming clients for Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, and Chromebook. So this gives you offsite protection and filtering and reporting granularity down to the device and user level. Again, these layers can be mixed and matched depending on your filtering or reporting needs. And in the course of this video, we'll cover how to decide when and where you would use these various options. So let's actually get started with that. The first is network forwarding. So the easiest way to deploy DNSFilter is to simply change your network forward settings for DNS to point to our Anycast IPs. You can do this at the router, modem, firewall level, again, whatever egress equipment you're using. So you can set a default policy that will apply to all of your devices. Printers, smart TVs, computers, tablets, anything connected to your network can be filtered by us. And this is very useful in pretty much any scenario, but it's very useful in scenarios where you don't have control over the end user endpoints. So you can't install software, for example, in the case of guest Wi-Fi, but you are still able to filter over DNS. So that's one of the very elegant ways in which DNS will give you protection, is that you can protect people even though you have no access to control the device specifically. The limitation here is that you're limited to the number of policies you can apply, which is usually 1 per network. So each egress unit that you have, whether or not it's a single IP or a block of IPs, it's going to be filtered according to 1 policy. It is worth noting that we have that NAT IP feature. So typically that's used on smaller networks, but you can actually separate separate VLANs internally and filter them according to policies on our end. A note there is that NAT IPs are not compatible with an Active Directory environment because it would involve selective forwarding by the domain controller, which Windows doesn't support. So when would you use network forwarding? Again, it's advised to use as a blanket method, even in combination with other methods, but you will also use it when you don't need per machine or per user statistics. You just need a bulk filtering policy to apply to your devices, when you only need one policy, and when nobody is roaming off-site. Let's talk about the relay. This is our second layer, the middle one from our chart before. The relay is a LAN proxy. It's a middleware that will act as an internal forwarder for DNS traffic. So it allows you to set policy controls based on your internal subnets. So the advantage of the relay is that you maintain internal DNS routing to LAN resources. So you're not breaking anything internally. You're still able to access your file server, your printer, anything else that you have going on locally. It's fully compatible with an Active Directory environment. So there's nothing that changes between your local routing. All that you'll do is you'll point all of your endpoints to the relay first, and the relay will decide whether or not it's a local resource and it will just pass through, or whether or not it belongs as an internet query, in which case it will send it to us. When would you use the relay? Well, you would use it when you need per machine or per IP statistics, even on devices which you don't control or are not able to install the roaming client on. So for example, IoT devices, things like that. You can filter by their IP address with no need to install any software on that device. You also want to use the relay when you don't want to, or can't run roaming clients on those devices at all. And then the third way is that if you have a machine available to act as a proxy. So that is the one requirement of the relay, is that it needs to be running. So it is a piece of software that you need to run either physically on a machine or on a virtual machine. That being said, it is a very lightweight piece of software. It's only responsible for proxying DNS traffic, which is a very lightweight protocol in general. So it is a very simple, very lightweight piece of software. And lastly, we have our roaming client. So again, DNSFilter has roaming clients on Windows, macOS, Android, and Chromebook. So it supports all major desktop and mobile operating systems, which gives you offsite protection, filtering, and reporting granularity down to the device and user level. So roaming clients give you the best of both worlds. You can assign a filtering policy to a device. You can also assign a filtering policy to a specific user, to a specific group of users, and that policy will follow them around. So if you assign it to a particular user and they have a filtering policy, then that will follow them around, no matter what computer they're on. If it's assigned to that machine, that it will also follow them around, whether they're at home, Starbucks, work, whatever it is, that policy will follow them around. The roaming clients have the least amount of limitations in terms of information. So whereas in the case of network forwarding, you only have aggregate statistics. In the case of relay, you have per IP statistics. In the case of roaming clients, you have per device and per user statistics. So you have the greatest depth of filtering and reporting granularity with the roaming client. The limitation, obviously, is that it requires software that runs. But as is the case of the relay, it's very similar with the roaming client. It's a very lightweight piece of software that binds to the network adapters on that device and proxies DNS traffic over to our servers. And again, DNS is such a lightweight protocol that it really requires almost no system resources to be able to run. It is very, very lightweight. So when would you use the roaming client? You would use it when you need to have offsite protection. And in the case of Windows, when you need per user filtering or reporting. Let's talk about deployment scenarios. So here are some of the common scenarios. First, we see a simple bulk filter using forwarding. There's a fair amount of organizations that use this. They tend to be industrial organizations, and they don't really need anything that fancy. They simply need a filter that's going to work on all the devices, on all of their networks, and it's going to be filtered by us. They're going to have security, threat protection. They're going to be able to filter content that they don't want to see, and all of that. So that's a very simple way to deploy DNSFilter. The second scenario here is we see a typical office which combines forwarding plus roaming clients. So on their network, that will have a blanket filtering policy that applies to all devices everywhere. They're making sure that they've got security filtering, for example. They're filtering out against malware, botnets, phishing attacks, things like that over DNS. And so they're able to lower their security risk profile. Then they combine that with roaming clients. So for all of their staff, they're deploying roaming clients to those endpoints so that whether their staff are at home, at the office, wherever they are, that they're being filtered. And then third, we'll see fully remote using roaming clients. DNSFilter itself is actually a remote company. We have places all over the world. And so we actually operate this way where we're able to use the roaming client, globally. And so this is a third scenario that we see pretty often, where people will want to they might not have a main office, they might not have a central hub. They want to protect all of their users, accessing all of their SaaS applications and whatnot. Now let's talk about pre-deployment options. So we created these questions specifically to help you navigate how to deploy DNSFilter for your environment. Answering these questions right here that you see in front of you will help you to decide which DNSFilter options you need for your organization. So the first question is, do I need offsite filtering? If you need offsite protection, you will need roaming clients. It's just that simple. That is the mechanism for being able to filter offsite. The second question is, do I have LAN devices that cannot run roaming clients? So think IoT devices, other devices which don't run a major operating system like Windows or Mac, but you would like to filter those devices. So in this case, you could run a network bulk filter if you only needed one policy, or if you needed more granularity, you could use the relay to filter based on specific IPs or subnet ranges. So you'd be looking at the relay in that case. The third question is, do I need per user reporting? If you need per user reporting, you will need to use the roaming client. So specifically for Windows, you'll need the roaming client. And then my next question is, do I want Windows user sync? If you want the ability to sync your Windows users with Active Directory, what you'll want to do is use our AD sync tool in combination with the Windows roaming client. And lastly, do I have guest Wi-Fi that differs in policy from the bulk network filter? If that's the case, you want to use NAT IPs or the relay to be able to create a secondary policy that's going to apply separately to guest Wi-Fi. So let's run through these questions as an example with a fake scenario. So I have an example of a typical office, and I'm going to run through these questions. Let's say I have 250 users at this office. I have a mixture of sales, IT, and executives. So I've got these different user groups, these different departments. So one, do I need offsite filtering? Yes, I do need offsite filtering. So I'm going to be looking at the roaming clients. Two, do I have LAN devices that cannot run roaming clients that I care about? In this case, no, I don't really have anything special. So I'm going to ignore that. I don't need to worry about that. Third, I do want per user reporting. So I am, again, going to be looking at the Windows roaming client. And this next question here, do I want to sync users with Active Directory? Yes, I operate an Active Directory environment, and I would really appreciate it to have that simplicity of seeing Active Directory users appear in my DNSFilter dashboard. So I'm not trying to do anything manual. I'm simply just syncing over the users I already have in Active Directory or in Azure. So yes, I do want to go with that. And last question, using Wi-Fi for guests. I do have guest Wi-Fi, but I'm not actually going to set up a separate policy for them. It's fine to have the guest Wi-Fi to use the same policy as my normal network forward. So in this case, having run through all these questions, I'm going to install the Windows roaming client. I'm going to deploy the AD sync tool, and I'm going to set up my guest Wi-Fi APs and my normal network to have a blanket policy network forward. So I'm going to be looking at network forwarding, the Windows roaming client, and the AD sync tool. So there's an example scenario. And at this point, I want to commend our knowledge base, which has complete walkthroughs at help.dnsfilter.com. If you visit this website, you'll be able to see videos on each and every section of our dashboard, as well as walkthroughs on how to set up every single deployment option that we have. So you'll see setup guides on Windows, setup guides on Mac OS, setup guides for different MDMs. So I really want to commend help.dnsfilter.com to you as a place where you can get good setup information. We also have articles on how to prevent circumvention. So how to lock down your firewall, restrict DNS, prevent people from using alternative DNS resolvers and things like that. So this is a really good website to be able to get some knowledge for setup. Next, we're going to go ahead and go through our walkthrough. And in this, I'm going to switch over to the DNSFilter dashboard as well as to a virtual machine. And I'm going to walk you through how to do a basic test setup, as well as how to administer DNSFilter from the dashboard. So how to view reporting, how to set up your filtering policies, how to go through each of these areas, how to add additional administrators and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hop over to that environment, and you can join me in a sec. In this part of the admin course, I'm going to show off the dashboard and how to onboard with a simple setup. My goal is to get you comfortable so that you can administer DNSFilter for your organization. For the sake of example, I'm going to demonstrate an initial test with the Windows roaming client. Let's get started in the dashboard. For our initial setup here, we can actually go right down the list on the left side panel. This overview page shows me a high-level snapshot of this organization. I can see high-level stats about request volume, blocked requests, and roaming client deployments. As I scroll down, you can see here it will show the most commonly requested domains and the status of my sites and networks. I'm going to now go ahead on the left and click on Policies to set up my filtering policy. Now I'm going to go to the top right corner here and click Add. And then I'm going to name my policy Test Policy. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Create. Now I'm going to go through each tab here, starting with the categories. I'm going to click to block adult content, P2P and illegal, and weapons, simply by clicking on them. Then these changes will be auto-saved on my policy. Now I'm going to go up again and click on the Safe Search tab. This will force users to view the moderated content versions of Google and YouTube, etc. So a lot of these major search engines have versions that are moderated, especially for children or for use in school or education environments. Since in my example, I'm a business, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this as is. Now I'm going to click on the Threats tab. This is where DNSFilter truly shines. By blocking threats at the DNS level, you can actually prevent outbound communication from your endpoints to malicious hosts on the internet. So we break the connection before the malicious party knows about you. So typically here, I recommend clicking on botnet, crypto mining, malware, new domains, phishing and deception, and proxy and filter avoidance. New domains is a great category to block because most phishing attacks are launched and ended within a month. So by blocking all newly registered domains, you add an additional layer here. Most websites that your users are going to browse to have been around much longer than 30 days. That domain has been in existence many times, even for decades, in the case of things like Microsoft or Google. Phishing and deception is also an area where our AI really excels. Our AI will tear down phishing pages like those fake Microsoft and Google login pages that you see around. It examines the image content, SSL mismatch, and bogus words and phrases that are in the page. So it examines both the text content that you see as well as HTML content on the page and assigns a heuristic score to it. So that's basically how our phishing detection works. We also look at the imagery that's on these pages. And we also compare that site against known good domains. So for example, we know whether or not it's an actual domain property of Microsoft or just some other domain out there on the internet. Now let's navigate over to the allow list. Both the allow list and the block list use wildcard blocking. So you can block at the subdomain level, the domain level, or even the top level or apex domain level. I'll demonstrate that here. And actually, rather, I mean, apex is the domain level. So TLD meaning top level domain. I'm going to go and type in mycompany.com. And then I'm also going to type in mycompany.com. And then I'm also going to type in simply com. Each of these are valid and will work at different levels. mail.mycompany.com will allow that subdomain. mycompany.com will allow that entire domain and all subdomains. And com would allow all .com websites. Obviously not advisable on the last one. I'm just showing that for sake of example. Now, don't enter IP addresses or URLs here. DNSFilter operates at the DNS level, which uses domain names, and we are actually the one that returns the IP address to your endpoint when it performs a DNS request. So putting IP addresses here is not valid, it's not applicable. Same with URLs. DNS is based on DNS host names, not on URLs. But I will say that it's a good idea here when you're considering your allow list to allow your own company domains and domains used by your operating system. So for example, Microsoft Update, to also allow your RMM or MDM tools, antivirus, security software, any known host names that you use on a daily basis for your security and IT applications. Those will really belong here on the allow list so that they're always allowed. Also, any domains needed by your end users to access particular software applications or any line of business applications you commonly use. We also have this import CSV button here, and we allow you to import a list that you may already have. So if you have this, for example, in your firewall already or in some other security software, you can also bring that out and put that in here as well. Both the allow list and the block list support importing CSV and exporting to CSV so that you can also get your data back out if you want to keep that list somewhere else. Now I'm going to go and click on block list to navigate to the block list. So again, the allow list and the block list operate the same way with wildcard matching. So they're very similar in how they operate. It's important to know that if for some reason the domain name is both on the allow list and the block list, that the domain will be allowed. That's a question that we get sometimes. People say, what if the domain is on both lists and maybe we have really long lists and we have lost track of it. When it comes to policy control, the allow list always wins, even over the categories or the block list. So if you manually put something in the allow list, we're assuming that you know what you're doing, you definitely want to be able to access that domain, and we won't get in your way. Now on the last tab, I'm going to click on the advanced tab here. This is where you can set up NAT IPs. And if I click on the extra settings tab here, I can also enable some experimental categories. And I'll leave that here for you to look at as you will. These are experimental. Sometimes we'll test new features using this. And if you want to be a part of testing and using these newer features for your organization, this is where you'll be able to do that. Now I'm going to go back to the left side panel, and I'm going to skip over filtering schedules in this video. But keep in mind that DNSFilter supports the ability to have different policies according to the times of day and days of week. So you can have different policies be enacted at different times of the day. For example, in a business environment, it's common to allow people to use social media during lunch or after work hours, for example. So we fully support that with filtering schedules. Now I'm going to click on block pages. This is the page that the end user will experience when they're blocked from accessing something. So if I go to the URL bar here, and if I open up a new tab and type in blocked.dnsfilter.com, I'll wait for this page to load. And that's an example. This is exactly what the stock block page is going to look like when an end user is prevented from accessing a website. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to click on Add Block Page. I'm going to put Test Block Page as the name. Then I'm going to type in Wayne Enterprises for the organization name. And I'm going to type in bwayne@wayneenterprises.com as the notice email. I could also upload a company logo here, but I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Now on the left side panel, I'm going to continue going down and to click on deployments. So my block page is now set up. That's extremely simple. Now this is what users will see when they're prevented from accessing a page. So I'm on the left side panel, I'm going to click on deployments. And this is where I'll configure my networks, my roaming clients, my AD sync tool, and my relays. So this is where I really configure the endpoint or client side deployment of DNSFilter. So for our test, I'm going to click on add to add a site. And you can think about this as a container. Typically, it's a one-to-one correlation with a physical location. So if you have a physical campus that has a one or a bundle of external IP addresses that are used for all outbound traffic and communication to the broader internet. So I would do a one-to-one correlation with your physical campuses or any kind of logical container that you would like to group people in. This is very central to our reporting, the idea of deployments or networks or sites. These are the terms that we'll use for that. So if you want a logical group for reporting purposes, you can also use deployments as well. So for our test, I'm going to click on add here to add a site. I'm going to fill in Batcave for the name. And I'll leave the location blank because in this case, it's the location of the Batcave. So I'm going to keep it secret. I don't want people to know where the Batcave is. But typically, you'll enter in your physical location here and it will show up on the overview map. Now, there is a toggle here that will allow you to turn off the roaming clients attached to this network when they're on a VPN. You only will need this toggle if there's a conflict with your particular VPN software. Most of them are supported without issue. So we simply have that here as an option. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on save, and I'm going to select my policy. Now I'm going to also select my block page as well. So effectively what I've done is I've assigned this policy and this block page to this location. So as soon as I put in DNSFilter's resolver IP addresses here, then and start sending my traffic obviously to DNSFilter, it will start to be filtered and it will be treated according to this policy, and users will see the block page that I've configured here. So at this point, I have actually already completed my setup on the DNSFilter side of a bulk network deployment. So as soon as I start sending my DNS traffic, that's it. So I would change that on my router, on my firewall, wherever I'm changing my DNS settings, and you're already up and running with DNSFilter. So obviously I've taken a while to explain this and get everyone up to speed on it. If you were to do this yourself, it would take you most likely less than 5 minutes to completely get set up with a network deployment of DNSFilter. So I just want to highlight how extremely quick you can get going with DNSFilter. I'm going to continue on and I'm going to set up a roaming client. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on roaming clients in the left panel here, and then I'm going to click on the install tab. And here you can see I can download the install packages for all major operating systems. So it's a one-stop shop. It's important to note that there is only one piece of information you need to attach with the install package, and that's called the site secret key. This key value will allow you to register this roaming client with the correct network. So it both authorizes that software package as well as identifies it to the particular site that it's deployed under. So I'm going to select my network. Then I'm going to copy the secret key value that it gives me. The next, I'm going to click and download the Windows Roaming Client 64-bit edition. For the sake of time, I've gone through already and clicked the usual next, 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 and pasted in my secret key value and installed the roaming client. So you can see here that my roaming client is up and running. I know that because in the tray icon down here, the icon color is blue, which means that it is operational, it is online. So when you first install the roaming client, it will be red. And then as soon as it starts making connection to our servers, it will turn blue. If I right click the icon, it also says online. And if I click on view local domains here, I can see a list of all the local domains that are picked up by the roaming client. So one of the key decisions that the roaming client will make is on every DNS request that comes through, It will decide whether or not this query belongs locally. For example, if you have an Active Directory network, it will send that query locally over to your domain controller, and then it will be processed from there. So that's how you'll maintain connection to any of your local resources, printers, file servers, you name it, anything that you have locally. The agent will detect that and will pass that on. And then anything that's not local, so anything not on this list here, will get sent upwards, out, egressed out through the network, sent over to DNSFilter for processing. So for these domains on the list, the agent will communicate with my local DNS server and not DNSFilter. So I can define these domains in the dashboard. That's one way. The second way is at install time using the flag, a command line flag. And the third way is by simply defining it in my DHCP settings. So the agent will pick up on all three sources. So if you're sending stub zones as part of your DHCP settings, the roaming client will automatically detect that and pick it up. So now that the roaming client is installed on my computer, let's go ahead and do a test. I'm going to open an incognito browser because I may have some websites cached already locally, either inside my browser or as part of my DNS cache on my system. So I'm going to open an incognito browser to make sure that that's not a factor when I'm testing. And I'm going to type in debug.dnsfilter.com. If everything is set up correctly, it will show my policy categories. So I can see here that once this page loads, the content categories and threat categories that I blocked will show up appropriately. So I know that I'm communicating with DNSFilter, and I know that my policy is the correct policy for what I've set. I can also visit one of these test domains. So for example, I could type in adult.filterdns.net, and it will show the block page that I had set up as well. So my test is complete. I know that my policy is working. My Windows roaming client's communicating with DNSFilter. So this machine is set up and it's ready to go. Let's go back to the dashboard. You can see here on the left side panel that you can also view collections, users, sync tools, and relays. Collections will allow you to group users and assign a policy to those users. If you're on an Active Directory environment, you can also use collections to synchronize with your AD groups. I'm going to click on Sync Tools. Here you can see I've added one already and that it's syncing to Azure. The Sync tool is a lightweight tool that can run on any Windows computer that is able to access your directory. It can sync both on-premise AD as well as Azure AD. Now I'm going to click on Collections. This is where I manage these groups of users. I've already created a collection here. Notice that I can assign a filtering policy and a block page to this group of users that I've defined. I'm going to open it up. Because this is synchronizing with an AD sync tool, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select the sync tool that I have synchronizing, which is sync tool dev here at the bottom. You can see here the groups of users that show up. I can use the checkboxes to select which AD groups I want to be a part of this collection. And then I can hit save. Let's move on and click reporting. You can see here another top level view of activity. By default, it shows the previous day. I could also go up at the dropdown here and select a different time range. At this top area, I can view the high level or I can drill down. I'm going to scroll halfway down the page. This middle area allows me to filter and examine my DNS traffic. At this bar at the top, I can break down by allowed or blocked requests, and I can sort by domain, by category, by collection, by user, or by roaming client. I'm going to click on breakdown by domain. Now I'm going to click on one of these domains in the list. You can see here a page dedicated to all the requests to this domain from my networks. It has a security threat assessment here. It has a view below of all the requests. And I can also click on the side arrow here to see full details about a specific request, including what roaming client or user made that request, and what other information DNSFilter knows about it, including which server location it was communicating with, what the latency time was, and other data like that. So you get a gold mine of information about specific DNS requests here. I'm going to scroll up and click back. Now I'm going to scroll down again, and this time I'm going to sort by roaming client. In a similar fashion, I see some stats on this page about this roaming client specifically, and I can scroll down and look at individual requests. I'm going to scroll up again and hit back. Keep in mind, I can also do this breakdown by user. So if you want to look at a specific user and their DNS traffic, it's the same process. Now, one of the most useful reports is to see the top threats that were blocked on my network. This is how you can see DNSFilter protecting you and what machines are being prevented from communicating with malicious hosts on the internet. At the top here, I can select threats, and I can also select domains. So now I can see the top malicious domains that are blocked on my networks. Pretty useful. Now let's finish out our tour of the dashboard. I'm going to click on Organization on the left. This first screen is the profile screen. And from here, I can put in my organization details. Let's move on, and I'm going to click on Users. This is where I'll do user management for the people that are able to access the dashboard and administer DNSFilter. I'm going to click on the link here to add user. From here, I can add additional administrators to my account. So there are a few account types here. There's admins who can have full access to the account other than canceling it. Only the owner can do that. Read only for people that need to view reporting but cannot change any settings. And edit policies only for people that you want to give access to make tweaks to a policy, but you don't want them to be able to delete deployments, uninstall roaming clients, and things like that. You just want them to be able to edit policies. On this screen, I can also view the two-factor auth status for all my users. Now I'm going to edit my billing information. So for single tenant accounts, you'll find that under the organization menu here on the left, I'm on a multi-tenant account for resellers. So I'm going to go to the dropdown at the top, and then I'm going to click into my MSP console. From there, I'm going to navigate to MSP and billing. So from here, I can click to select a plan type, a term, and I can enter the number of users I have. You can also see the invoices and manage tabs here at the top. And this is where you can adjust your billing information, such as the credit card you have on file, etc. Now let's go back into the tenant I was managing by clicking on the top and selecting New Dawn. Now I'm going to click on Organization Settings. Now this will allow you to limit PII collection in compliance with GDPR. Keep in mind, it will remove roaming client details from reporting. That's the nature of removing the PII that we would otherwise collect. But now I'm going to head over to the Tools menu. There are a couple of useful tools in here. The first menu is for the SSL certificate. This is used for displaying the "You are blocked" page to end users when they attempt to automatically visit an HTTPS page that is blocked by your policy. If you're using the roaming client, this is already installed automatically. Next is the query log. I'm going to click in here. This is the raw record of each DNS query that we have received from your organization. You can think about it as a ledger of all the DNS requests that we have received from your networks. Now I'm going to select New Dawn Miami. Notice how it displays information about each of these requests, such as the fully qualified domain name, how we classify the domain, how it was treated by your policy. And you can also click to download the record of this as a CSV. Next is the policy audit log. This will show you all the edits that were made to your policy so that you have a trail of who is responsible for any modifications that were made. And last in this section, we have the domain report tool. This tool allows you to look up the categories of a domain and even report a disagreement for manual review, as well as adding it to your policies. I'm going to click in here and enter Microsoft.com. When I hit go, I can see it as categorized as business and IT. I could click to report the categories as being wrong, or I could click to report them as being a threat. I could also add it to one of my filtering policies right from here. The last feature to call out is our integrations. I'm going to click up in the top dropdown here to select my MSP console. Then I'm going to click on integrations. This is a new area that launched with our Zapier connection. Using Zapier, you can connect DNSFilter to your ticketing system, your CRM, your team communication system, your PSA platform, and over 3,000 applications. Most leading tools that you use on a daily basis are going to be available in Zapier. Using these integrations, you can connect DNSFilter account activity, such as users being blocked from visiting malicious websites or visiting certain categories of sites, or even requesting certain sites to be unblocked, into actions in other applications, such as sending a Slack or Microsoft Teams message or creating a ticket in your PSA. You can also be alerted on account activity, such as admins being added or removed from your account, as well as their second factor auth status changing. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that here in this top right corner button, support, you can view our documentation, watch setup tours, view our network status, or open a support ticket. Our time together in this admin course has come to an end. If you're watching this and do not yet have an account with DNSFilter, I want to encourage you to sign up for a free, no obligation trial at dnsfilter.com. Thank you for watching and happy filtering.